difference between your instinct and your intuition, and how do we teach those two separate things, especially to our children today. So your instinct is that human aspect of you, that ego, that fear, that survival brain, the animal brain that is saying, if you do this, you're not safe because you will die. I don't know what that is. I've never been there before. It's brand new. It is unknown. This is danger, and I don't know how to protect you from it because we haven't been there before. Hold back, don't go. Red stop sign. Your intuition is the aspect of you that is that higher soul awareness that is asking to expand. It's asking to pursue your dharma. And for those of you who don't know dharma, it's your soul's purpose here on earth.
What's going on, everybody? We are back, and this time I have such a dear and close friend with me, and her name is Alexius Mika, and I'm actually going to let her introduce what she does. So first of all, Alexius, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
As I said before we started this, you were again one of the individuals I thought about right away when I thought about doing the podcast, because we have a bit of a history knowing each other from the online world.
Yes.
And we met online streaming because I was doing my music thing and you were doing your live streaming thing, and you were kind of doing some managing, and we somehow came across each other, and I got to know your life and your story, and I've been fascinated by it ever since. So that's why I invited you on the podcast.
I appreciate it. I'm excited because years ago you talked about doing the podcast. So to be here on your real life happening now podcast is very exciting.
It is. And some of it's going to be interesting because I'm going to go through, I go through a series of questions that I ask most of my guests, and wherever this goes, it goes. So first of all, welcome everybody listening to the podcast. Thanks for following. Thanks for listening. And thanks for being part of this journey. I'm really excited to continue it. And so the first thing I was going to ask you, Alexius, was if there was a thing or event in your life that happened that you can pinpoint that directed you on the path that you are on now.
Oh, I love that question. Absolutely. There's like a handful of events that I could say, hey, this thing got me here today. The thing that really, really got me to where I am is just a lot of trauma in my past history. And that opened up a path for me to meet you, for me to come into the space of meditation, energy healing, psychology, and to have the awareness I have today.
So so there wasn't one particular event though, or a moment. It was a series of events?
Kind of a combination, like lots of different things from the time I was little, where I had a certain awareness of this is what I want to do with my life. There's one specific night where it was kind of that like dark night of the soul moment where I just did not want to do earth anymore. I really was over it, didn't want to be here. It was kind of like this begging God, begging soul, begging whatever you identify with to not have to be here anymore. And the best way I can explain it is that moment, there was almost like this pop of awareness where all of a sudden it felt like, if I'm going to be down here, I have a purpose, I have a path that I'm going to lead, and I get to be on earth. And that really is that moment where it was a lot of deep suffering, where I just kind of like came out of it and started taking the steps that got me to where I am today.
What age were you when that was going on?
I was in my early 20s. If I had to guess, it was probably around like between 21 and 23 when that took place.
Okay. So you started off, because one of the questions I go over, and I may not even know this, like there's going to be a lot of things I do know about you because we've talked in the past, but did you grow up with influences around the things you do now? Like, did you have a spiritual upbringing or around meditation? And
I grew up in a very, very strict Catholic church. So like going to church every Sunday, all of the, traditional Catholic dogma kind of upbringing that you think about. I'm the second oldest of 7 kids. So even like having a large family is really normal for the Catholic traditions, believing in God, that when you grow up, you get married, you have kids, you're a wife, and that's your role as a woman. I grew up in all of that. I didn't know anybody that did psychology. I didn't know anybody that did any kind of meditation practice at all. I didn't know about meditation or chakras or energy healing. I later found out that a huge hub for the work that I do now is like 30 minutes from my hometown. So it was close by the whole time I was a kid, but it was never something that I had awareness around.
Okay. So you had no influence around it. You're going through life. You're going through the ups and downs of your teenage years and all these things, and we can talk about that. And then you get into your 20s and you find spirituality.
Yes.
Okay. So did you immediately get involved in spirituality first, or was it meditation? Was it meditation that got you into the spirituality? Or did you just right away want to seek more in life? Because for me, it was, I went through anxiety. I started building a mass amounts of anxiety around the age of 15, 16, and started questioning what I'm doing here. It was almost like a out of body experience, if you will. Like I felt like, who is this? What is this? Like, what am I doing? And I started panicking about dying because I was like, I'm not going to exist someday. Like, who am I? Like, I'm not going to exist. And that led into a series of health anxiety disorders I ran into. And, and that went on for years, probably until my early 20s. And during that time, I seeked everything spiritual. Just for the audience listening, can you kind of explain the different hats you wear? Because in my opinion, I've kind of watched you wear a few. So what would you describe yourself as now, your job title?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I'm kind of a jack of all trades, and I go where it feels intuitively right to go. When we first met, I was super diving into the world of music. I'd always wanted to do music. It wasn't something that I really ever did. And so I dove all the way into it and gave 1,000,000%. And met you while I was in a chapter of my life where I was a working musician living in Los Angeles. And then from there, I found the spiritual work. I started doing energy healing, intuitive healing, and we've had a chance to do some of that fun stuff together. So working with spirit guides, your chakras, clearing your aura, removing energy cords. I then went on to do meditation teacher training. So I also teach meditation. I still do these things. They're a big part of my life. I also go to school for psychology. And so on my bucket list for this life is to get a PhD in psychology and to be able to do clinical work and really do the research around how do we bring research behind these meditation and energy healing practices that we do. Currently, right now, at this moment in time, I recently started working for a nonprofit organization that helps foster youth. And I'm working with individuals age 16 to 26 to help them learn independent living skills. And it's this really powerful part of my journey because those were the years where I struggled the most, where I was in a lot of suffering, where I needed a version of me that exists today to guide me. And I get to offer that and hand that to these individuals that I'm working with on a daily basis.
Do you ever see, that's awesome, by the way, and I didn't know you were going for your PhD. That's pretty crazy. That's awesome. It doesn't surprise me because that's probably why you and I had so many things in common with the music, spirituality, psychology, all these things, right? Do you see in these individuals you're working with, you see a lot of a reflection of yourself?
Yeah, my parents were foster parents. So they brought these foster kids into our home and they worked with babies. So I think one time had a foster kid that was older in their teenage years, and that was for a week, and that was it. Other than that, there were babies that were coming in and out. Now, when you look at the science, the research around what does being in foster care do, what does that do on your mental health? What are kind of the wounds that you come out of that system with? These kiddos, they talk to me about them all the time, and they're ones I can't identify with. And it's a strange thing because I had stable family. My parents are still married. They adopted a couple of the kiddos that we fostered, and I stayed in that home. I wasn't a foster child, yet so much of what these foster youth talk about, I can absolutely relate to because it's my experience too. So things around not being able to trust adults, not being able to trust people will stay in your life, feeling scared to let people in, just different core beliefs that you learn when you go through that kind of a system and are a part of that dynamic during your childhood years.
So the work that you're doing right now is specific to foster kids. They've been through the system.
Yeah, so the job when I applied for it and took it on, I didn't realize it would be involved with foster youth. It was just individuals that are between 16 to 26 that need independent living skills. And it just so happens that the grant that I'm working with in the State Department area section that I'm a part of works primarily with foster youth. So I do have some participants that I work with that aren't foster, but most of them are that I come in contact with.
That's really interesting. I'm trying to see where, because I knew you as the spiritual person. I'm going to jump back a little bit, okay? Because so we can see what you're doing now. You're working in trauma. You're working with youth, which is awesome. I also worked with youth for a while. That's how I started my music teaching business. I started teaching guitar in correction facilities and things like that, and that was really wild. It was a wild experience, but like it was kind of some of the most exciting moments in my teaching career. So but going backwards a little bit, because another thing that, and you had mentioned it earlier, that you worked with me on was meditative skills, right? So you have been one of the only people. I have had a past life regression with a hypnotist. That was an interesting thing I did, but I've never really had success with meditation before. And you were someone that was able to help me with that and actually take me into some moments that I didn't actually think I could get to. So are you still practicing your meditative business? Like, because it sounds like you're doing the trauma work. Are you integrating that into the trauma work too? Or are you doing that separate? Or where does that fit in your life right now? Because I really want to dive into the meditation piece of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy you're bringing it back to that because this role, it's really new for me. So it's really exciting to talk about. But at the foundation of what I do, it's my meditation. What I would say is that meditation is this foundation for me. I need meditation so that I can do the work that I'm here to do, whether that is this current role with this nonprofit organization. Long term, I have the intention of working with sex trafficking survivors. Trauma is like my passion. And so for me, meditation starts with my own individual practice. It's something that I show up for all of the time. From the time I was little, I was a very intuitive being where I remember one time I was writing in my journal about how fun it would be to have sisters that were adopted. And this was years before we ended up starting foster care and adopting a couple of kiddos from the foster care system that are now my beautiful sisters who I love more than anything. So many moments of that awareness as a young kid. So when meditation came in for me, when intuitive healing came in for me, it's like I finally had a foundation and a structure to understand kind of this awareness I had always had, but it was almost like this forbidden thing that was wrong or broken or not allowed or just really scary because I didn't understand what was happening when I was getting these intuitive insights. And so now, how does that play out? My own individual practice is something that I'm still constantly practicing with. I go work my little 9 to 5 job. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm working with my clients. I've got one-on-one clients that I do intuitive healing and meditation with. I'm actually getting ready to start a weekly healing circle that's completely 100% free on Sundays that I'll be offering. And I'm hoping it can be kind of this reoccurring safe space for people to come to that. For me, I miss that church community. I don't miss church, but I miss the church community. So it's a time we can come together Sunday morning to be in community with one another, in that space of we're humans, we've been through trauma, how do we heal, how do we hold space for each other and create an inclusive space and environment. And then as far as this other work that I do, my long-term intention is to really bring it all together and to let myself be a multidimensional being with many passions and to kind of create something magical with that. I don't know what that is yet. I am constantly kind of carving away at it and trying to figure it out. But for the time being, I've got my meditation business and I've got my nonprofit organization that I work for. And I keep planting the seed of meditation and trauma healing, and I'm weaving them, and we'll see where it goes.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to get real with some stuff here now.
Let's do it. Let's go.
So, because we've had some real conversations in the past, we get into conversations about, you said, multidimensional beings, things like that, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about some stuff. But first, before I do that, I wanted to ask you, I am someone that music has been my meditation. Music has been the thing that takes me to that meditative state. It doesn't matter how hard I try to bring a meditation practice into my life, I find it very difficult to do it on my own. And I think at some point I just realized that some people are good at doing that on their own, and others need guides. Others may need that push. I mean, I look at my guitar and my music and everything when I get into a real crazy space as a guide as well. Okay. Because that's kind of getting me into that space, and then I'm gone and I'm saying what's coming through me. But it's a different form of meditation, because again, when I had that meditation work that I did with you, and we did quite a few of them, I'm going to talk about the one moment. There was that one moment where you had me in this meditation that was happening, and I was really at ease. I was really kind of gone. I had left the building or whatever. And the next thing I remember is and you may remember this or not, but I was like in the air, and I was like floating in these clouds, and it was purple everywhere, and the sky was purple, and the clouds were there, and I could visualize it, and I could feel myself there. And I, in that moment, realized that nothing and everything matters, meaning nothing around me really matters because I am everything. So when I was in that moment, it was this first time that I think I had ever felt bigger than who I thought I was. Like, it was like this, it made the small things not matter. And I'm sure you can relate. You're shaking your head. Yes. So you've probably had moments where you've done that on your own. Again, I needed you as that guide to get me to that place. I don't know how else to say it. And I guess my question to you is, why do you think some people need that? Why do you think some people need the guidance? And why do some people have the ability of just going there on their own?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a layered question. There's so many different perspectives I could bring into the mix. From a very like human psychology standpoint, we can talk about the nervous system. If your nervous system is dysregulated, you're not in a feeling of safety in the body. It's in general harder to access those other realms, those other dimensions. Either that, or you're disassociating and popping out and maybe kind of living there, not really grounded in your body. And so having a guide, having someone that is teaching you and leading you, you can kind of surrender, especially if you trust them, you can surrender to that guidance and you can co-regulate with them. So in psychology, when we co-regulate our body, our nervous system gets into that feeling of safety. And by going through meditation with a teacher, you can co-regulate. That's what people do in therapy often. So I think there's that very human element of it where we need to be in safety in the body in order to access these other spaces. Even like when we think about if you are trying to figure out how to pay your bills, if you don't have money to like pay your bills, to buy your groceries, to make sure your lights are on, then you're operating from a very different space than if you have that safety. So it's a very similar kind of thing, except from like an energetic standpoint. And then I think it depends on how your energetic makeup is. So for some individuals, they come to earth. Their soul's journey in this lifetime is to come to earth, and they've got maybe more energy in the third eye space, and so they channel, or the crown is a little bit more open, so they channel a little bit easier. For other individuals, they're very focused in the earth dimension. They're very focused in what's happening here, and so they might need some of that guidance to help open those other spaces up. From my experience with the intuitive healing work that we have done together with my own teacher, it's always so much easier to go to those spaces when she's guiding me, even though I've been doing this for a handful of years, because she's channeling that frequency, that vibration. And so then it makes it accessible for me to meet her in that frequency and vibration. So I think there's an element of that as well, that if you have someone coming in that has access to that before, that's maybe has that in a more grounded and embodied way, then they can help bring you into that space with them.
I think that's one reason why it's a beautiful thing, and why I have such a passion in human beings having instruments and music to use, because I believe that my little 11-year-old body, when I was little learning to play guitar, I was actually creating a tool, an access portal, if you will, that will allow me later on in life, including now, to be able to grab the guitar, go to a space, and then if I can get in the right headspace, lose myself and feel what's necessary or what's needing to come through me. And so again, but it's like my body and that guitar or the piano or whatever is the guide. It's the guidance giving myself permission to go there. Like if I just sat and started singing randomly, I don't think I would go there. I think I need that sound, that music, the vibration, all that going. I know it's different than, sitting meditation, but I put out a few shorts on this channel, and I was asking some people about what is your form of meditation, or I would say, do you have trouble meditating? And I was getting some private messages, some comments, things like that. And I found some people meditate when they're walking. They were saying some people are able to meditate while they're doing gardening, or they're probably don't, I wouldn't suggest to do this, but some say they do it. They feel like they do it when they're driving. People are going into their own like space when they're in their calmest space. But I do believe that some people need that moment in time to stop, because we, and I don't know how deep we want to get into the spiritual talk here, but we aren't this, and we get caught up in this and everything that is noisy, and without the ability to stop and not think is important. I just think it's so important, and it's so important now. I have 2 teenage almost years kids. I see young people on their phones, swiping through, brain overload. And I think more than ever, we need to be grounded, to remember who we are. So I love what you're doing, and that's why I asked and wanted to make sure you were still doing it. I'm very proud of you, and it's awesome the other work you're doing, because you're doing the work here as well, and in helping people that need help. But yeah, so I don't know if you want to say anything on that, but I just want to comment on it, that I don't think it's just a form of one type of meditation, but I do think that if you're having trouble meditating or having trouble calming your mind, I think a guide is a great way to access that space.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm happy that you brought that conversation in, that element of there's different forms of meditation. In some of the most dogmatic practices I have been a part of, a conversation has been that it's not meditation unless you're sitting at your meditation altar in stillness meditating. And for me, that's never worked. It's a very one size fits all approach. And there's days where, say, I've got scoliosis, so my back hurts. I need to lay down in bed to meditate. But that definition says that's not meditation. Or like you said with your music, my husband is the same exact way. He's a musician, and I've never really known him to sit at the altar and meditate. He will join me from time to time, but for him, the second he starts creating and he's in his art, he's channeling whatever frequency, whatever vibration that is, and he gets into that meditative state. He's also someone that talks about how driving is very meditative for him. It's very calming, it's very soothing. And kind of to bring this back, some psychology back into it, a lot of this is that one form of meditation, when we talk about mindfulness, we talk about getting into that feeling of safety. We are constantly in the brain, go, go, go all of the time. We are so stimulated all day long. And that's causing a lot of us to get stuck in that survival part of the brain. Something that's really fun and exciting that I've discovered in my journey is kind of where that intuitive healing meditation and the Western medicine merge. Is there's this wonderful practice called EMDR. And what scientists have found out is that when you activate the left and then the right side of the brain, it allows you, it's called bilateral stimulation, and it allows anything that's stuck in that part of the survival brain to process, so you can arrive at safety. You can process memories that are stuck in that part of your brain that says, I'm not safe, this is dangerous. So things like listening to music that kind of have a pattern where they go back and forth, walking, even like patting your legs back and forth, left and right, anything like that can really help bring you to a calmer state. And there's a lot of bilateral stimulation music online if you're ever curious about exploring it. But so many of these meditation practices are about finding presence, getting into the now, having radical acceptance for what your world is around you and being okay, and not spiritually bypassing it by so radically accepting life that everything's just going to happen how it is, and now I'm the victim of my life. But instead recognizing this is how life is right now, this is who we are, this is where I am, this is what's going on. How can I be empowered in that to make a change in a way that feels good for me and is from a heart-centered space? And these different forms of creativity, they help us channel this different energy, and they help us get to that calm state. For me, painting used to be my go-to that would help me. And absolutely, I was channeling. I'd paint things that would later come true. I've got this, it's kind of this creepy, irky thing that my husband and I joke about, but I've got this photo of him that I drew years ago. And when I met him, I pulled it out, and I don't have very much of my art left from when I was in like early 20s, but I still had this. I pulled it out and it looked just like him. And so we can channel through our music, through our art, through our creativity in these really powerful ways. You can be sitting there doing the dishes and you're present. You can feel the water on your hands, the temperature of the water, the soap suds, that kind of a thing. And it can help you come to the present moment. And I feel like so much of our mental health stuff, we're being asked to become present so that we can really get out of like all the stimulation and into a heart-centered space where we can actually connect with one another beyond the pain and suffering that just plagues what it means to be a human.
Well, one thing I know for sure is when I was going through the meditative work with you, and then trying to do some meditation, some self-meditation on top of my music, is that I found that meditative work that I've done has helped me clear my mind of junk and give me some kind of power back in my decision making in life. You know, and I don't know if that makes sense, but for instance, if you have too much going on around you and you're too busy, your mind is too busy, that can really affect decisions you're making and things you're doing in your life, and can lead you astray. It can lead you to, delay things that you love and want and desire in your life. And I found when I was working with you and afterwards that it was clearing my mind up from all the mud. And I've tried to continue to do it. Music is generally my thing I go to, but even that has been a little difficult in the last couple of years. I'm getting back to it now. But I think it's so important. So if anybody's listening in and you're wanting to clear your mind, you're feeling, I think a lot of us, we get so overwhelmed. One of my biggest places that I like to go is when I'm in the shower. For some reason, I feel like, I don't know if that's like some kind of, if I'm cleansing my body, I'm cleansing my soul or my mind or something. I don't know. I go in and then I come out and I have all these ideas of things I want to do. And this podcast probably came out of a shower moment. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, it probably was a thought. that came to me. But again, that's a form of meditation in a way. It's just brief. And if we can get ourselves to a place where we can calm down every day, I think it's important. I want to move in a little bit of an odd direction with you. And, we talk about some strange things. I want to ask you, has there ever been any, because I don't even know, if I were to even ask you how many times you've meditated in your life, you probably wouldn't even have a number. So if I were to say to you, have you ever had a moment or anything in your life while you were meditating that kind of came across like some sort of spiritual encounter or something bigger than yourself where you realize, wow, we are much more than what's going on? Was there ever a moment like that? Anything that was beyond just your own self, something that was like an interesting moment that you went through?
Oh, I've got some stories, bro.
Yeah, yeah, I was curious.
Stories, bro. I think kind of my spiritual practice, my experience in this realm has been one moment after the next of these moments of remembering that this is more than what like my human self knows it to be. It's like these moments of awakening where it's that oneness where it's like you get pulled into this space that is so expansive and you're reminded that you are one of everything. We are all one, we are all connected, we are beyond this human form, beyond this human life. A little part of my journey that's really intense, and I'll give a trigger warning here. I am a survivor of sex trafficking. So when I came out of my parents' home, I was recovering from, being for the first time. I was smoking a lot of marijuana. I ended up in a situation where I thought it was modeling, and it was not modeling. It was a trafficker. And then I kind of from that trafficker went to another one and another one and another one. And went through this really intense journey of a lot of pain and suffering and a lot of drug addiction. I was homeless for a while. I got in a domestic violence situation. So just a really intense handful of years where the thing that kept me going was this knowingness that this too shall pass, that this is not forever. And then I'm going to get on the other side of this and I'm going to use my experience to help other survivors heal. And that really is this like pulling force inside of me that keeps me going every single day. That I was little and I used to write in my journal about how I would go through something really challenging. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was going to be, but that most people wouldn't survive what I was going to go through. And I take that knowledge and that lived experience and help this world. And I mean, little me, like elementary school me, would like write about these things all of the time. And it's something that I kind of, my mind arrives at time and time again of this knowingness that from the time I was little, I knew I'd go on this journey. And one of the most profound experiences for me was my initial trafficker that pulled me into that world. There's no reason I should have gotten away from him, but there was this day where all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I didn't think I could get away. I had never made plans to try to escape him. All of a sudden, it felt like something took over me and literally woke up inside of me saying, you need to leave now. And I don't even really remember the day, but I know that I got myself out of that situation. And then again, it led to me kind of falling into that pattern time and time again. But that very initial one was the most dangerous situation that I should not have ever gotten out of. And exactly what you're kind of talking about here, where it was this moment that was larger than life, where something inside of me just knew I needed to go and I needed to go now, and it saved my life. I've got another like less daunting story that's not as intense, where there was one time in my early years before I started visiting a meditation studio and really like getting into meditation and doing my intuitive healing training, where I was doing a chakra YouTube video that it would do just like the binaural beats for the chakras. It was a chakra cleansing experience. And I was laying in bed and I opened my eyes and I saw this floating head in the room. And it was one of my spirit guides. And I'm very connected to this spirit guide. It's one that I've felt a strong connection with since I was little, but it was so creepy because it felt very physical. And it was this thing where I was like, what is that? It's like this head floating in the room. And whether you believe what I'm saying or not, as listeners in this, I remember seeing it and it was so intense for me that it woke something else up inside of me. And even to this day, as we are speaking now, I can feel that I have a team of angels around me that are constantly holding me up and constantly helping me take the next steps forward. And if I did not have that connection to that, to them, to this spirit family that I feel around me, I don't know how I would have found the strength to be where I am today.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I know that's it's an area of your life that was probably one of the biggest pieces of your life that made you who you are today, though, and it's like we've said, sometimes you go through difficult times in life so that you can see a different, it kind of you go through the darkness to see the light. We can say it whichever way we want to say it, but I think that that is part of life. And I was actually sitting here and thinking about how busy, you are now doing all this, the work that you're doing and all these different things. And, you know, have you ever noticed in life sometimes, and I don't know if any of the listeners can attest to this or anything, but where there's moments in your life where you feel super connected to spirit, like really connected to spirit, almost to a point where you can't even function. Not that you can't function, but that's like your main drive. And then you get lost in life again and you get busy with all the busyness of life, kids, work, family, world events, these things, they get, and they take a hold of you. And then all of a sudden that calms down again. You're back to spirit. And then you go back and you're now back on this track again of doing life again. I have found personally, that's what's happening in my life all the time. It's like I go through these waves of, so I don't know if it just means, okay, remember, Joe, you're here for Earth and we're going to bring you through Earth and you're going to go through all the things that happen, all the crazy things. And then, okay, right. And then you're going to work through that. And okay, now that you're through it, now we're going to get back to spirit. Now we're back to spirit and we're going to stay there for a while. And oh, something happens. Now we're back. Now we're going through the motions of life. This is a new chapter. The older I get, I'm starting to see these patterns, like where it's like I'm getting lost in life and then back to spirit, and then lost to life and then back to spirit. And have you experienced that? That's the first question. Have you experienced that yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there's so many perspectives on what's going on there, and I'm really excited you're bringing this into the conversation. In intuitive healing, we talk about, so imagine I'm a very visual person. I used to paint all of the time. And so I see energy very visually. So imagine you're here and you have just a whole bunch of like pictures stuck to you, maybe like 6 feet in every direction. You're here and in 6 feet, there's just a moment in time and it's like a little picture, this moment that happened. And then there's a picture here of this moment that happened and a picture over here of this moment that happened. And as you go through your life, you'll experience things that have a similar vibration to that picture. It's living in your aura, it's living in your energy field, and it's calling in, it's attracting things that are similar to it. And so what happens with the intuitive healing space is we start to awaken to those patterns, to the things that are going on. And we call it like a picture getting triggered and activated. And we kind of fall all the way into the chaos of Earth and the chaos of that story. And what that is it's an energy that lives with you that you're karmically clearing and healing and exploring and going through. It's this reclaiming of that aspect of yourself so that you can bring maybe that shadow aspect, that part of you that's, needs to identify with whatever humanness that is. You're bringing that into the awareness with your higher soul awareness. So it's almost like you're collecting pieces of yourself. The other thing that I think is really important to bring into the conversation is that there's a huge belief within the spiritual realm, and I believe this as well, that we are here now at this time because we chose to be on Earth. There's a lot of spiritual beliefs that talk about how it's actually from like a soul level, a gift to incarnate as a human. That's not something that's just offered to every soul that ever was. And so it's really a blessing. And we're here now because we chose to be here at this time to experience Earth through what is going on. Now, that's really challenging to even bring into the equation because it can sound like you're just bypassing all of the hard that's going on. Because, as someone who has been through just a ridiculous story of a lot of trauma and a lot of pain to come to the place of, well, I chose that. There can be a lot of spiritual bypassing within that. So we want to be careful and mindful of that part of it. But but also we're here, we're humans. We chose to come to Earth. We chose to have these experiences. We can grow, we can heal. This is like a school where we come and we learn about how energy works. From a space of non-duality, there is no right or wrong, there's just experience. And so we come here to experience. Now we see, and right now it's such a sensitive time because there's a lot going on Earth. There's a lot of pain and there's a lot of suffering. There's a lot going on through the news, that everyone has their relationship with what's going on there. And so to be mindful of that part of it, and that situation, there's trauma and pain and suffering that happens, and how can we bring more love and healing and light to that, and recognizing, okay, I'm here, there's a part of my soul, my awareness that wants to be here. How can I bring healing to that? That's what I found to be the most powerful and beneficial. And when I get stuck in the humanness of it all, bringing that perspective back in of what is the lesson in this for me? What is it that I'm participating with? Because maybe there's a part of me I need to reclaim and love unconditionally. And that vibration, that heart-centered vibration of unconditional love really can be where we move ourselves out of that and back into this oneness space.
I would say too, it's probably, you mentioned one thing about I think awareness is key, right? So when you're going through these new life moments, these things that are kind of taking you and kind of being a little bit chaotic in your world, doesn't necessarily mean negative. It could be a positive chaos too. It just means it could be just busyness, could be a brand new job, a new career, a new life event, or a baby, or any of these things. I had a colicky baby for 3.5 months, and it felt like 7 years. And time doesn't exist apparently in the afterlife, but it sure does here. And it felt like 7.5 years of a colicky baby, and I love her to death, and she's much happier now. But that was an experience, and it was an experience I never thought I was going to go through ever in my life. And I'd heard about it. I thought it was just maybe parents that didn't know what they were doing, but apparently I was wrong. It's an actual thing. So these are different events we go through, and then you got to be aware, like what is the learning? What did I learn in that? Patience? What did I learn in that? And what am I supposed to kind of overcome? And maybe that's part of it. That's key in being here and going through the motions of life, right? So I'm going to talk about something else you mentioned about, we incarnate and we're living here on this earth, and we're going through the human experience. And in the spirit world, I follow a lot of spiritual teachers. I follow a lot of YouTubers who are very in touch with their spiritual self and their guides themselves, their coaches, whatever they may be. And a lot of them mention this world, this earth going from the third to the fifth dimension. I hear this all the time. And it's an area that I'm very confused about, if I'm being honest with you. And I didn't know if you knew anything about it. I don't know if it has to do with like the physical, going from the third dimension of physical, like being physical, into this fifth dimension of non-physical. And, that we're here at a very special time. You hear that a lot. And I'm curious if you know anything about that, if you have any insight on it. If you don't, that's fine too. But I have been hearing a lot about it, and I'm wondering what your insight is on that.
Yeah, I think that all of that is a very popular theme right now in the new age spirituality world. And I love that space because it's new, it's different. There's a lot being shared. I'm also very mindful of, where's there misinformation even within that community. And I think everyone's experience within all of that is different. I'm going to go a little woo-woo here and kind of talk about things that I don't normally share in the world, but I think it's really relevant to this conversation. From my experience in meditation, from my like meditative experience, my awareness's experience of that, I don't necessarily follow too much of the we're going 3D to 5D. I've heard it a lot. I've heard a lot of conversation around it. Something that I've been curious about for many years is this idea that there are different like species of consciousness on this planet at this time, meaning that the way your awareness works could operate very different from how my awareness operates and works, from how someone else's does. And that there's like these groups of awareness that operate in different ways, right? And when we look at that, it almost to me feels like it's this space where there are many different earths happening at the same time. That like there's this concept of earth, but there's different vibrations of earths happening at the same time. And so my experience of earth could be very different from your experience of earth. For me, from the time I was little, I have been excited to be on this planet. And there's been times where it's been really hard and challenging, and where I've gone the opposite, where I want out, I don't want to be here anymore, get me off this planet now, why do I have to be here? And I've had to bring myself back to, okay, there's a reason, and if my soul was not supposed to be here anymore, I would leave. And when I come back to that space of oneness for myself, that vibration, that heart-centered space, I get so excited to be here, to enjoy being a human, to have the experience of being a human. Like being here with you now at this time, we live in a reality where you're in a totally different country from me, and we get to have friendship and connection where I
Right.
wouldn't have that with you if we weren't here now at this time. And something as simple as like walking through the park and seeing the trees and hearing them speak to me, because trees, they talk, they have communication, they have a vibration of their own. And my experience of earth, more times than not, especially since I've really done a good amount of healing work, there's always still more, but a good amount around my trauma, is that I'm here, I'm alive, I'm breathing, I get to have this life, and it feels really magical and it feels really special. And when I'm in my intuitive space, when I'm in energy healing, that's my experience of earth at this time. Now, that isn't to bypass all of the pain and suffering that's going on. That's me understanding that I can be excited to be here, and to also go into those really hard, dark, challenging spaces and offer a helping hand, because I have the privilege of that, where other people don't have that privilege. So how can I pass that forward? And to come back to that 3D versus 5D, I think that all of us at different times are awakening to different things and raising our energetic vibration. And it's almost up to us to lend a helping hand to help bring our brothers and sisters into this frequency with us. And in that, it's almost like there's different realities playing out all at the same time, based on the energetic vibration that you're currently residing in. And this gets weird because we're humans, so we want to judge and compare, where we think, oh, I need to do this and that to be there, and why am I not good enough? And there's none of that. That doesn't live in this energetic makeup. It's all a matter of, what is your soul here on earth for? What are the lessons you're learning? And who are you going to come across in perfect timing to be where you need to be? Because at every moment in time, you're exactly where you need to be in that moment. So I think there's something to that vibrationally moving. I don't really understand the whole concept of like 3D versus 5D, what exactly that means. But I do think that we're at a time of a lot of awakening, a lot of really healing this lineage of pain and suffering. One of the best examples I have is that during the time that Obama was president, was the time that I was being sex trafficked. So the world, America, was coming into a space of hope because we had our first Black president. And at the same time that was happening, I was being sex trafficked, and I was seeing all of the pain and suffering in the world.
Wow.
And now we see this reality where, we had that hope. And I'm at a time now where I made it through that. And I feel very inspired to continue to pass this work forward and to teach and to be a healer and a guide. And we're seeing just different countries in this world completely fall apart and be in war.
Right.
So, I think it's everyone's time, everyone's journey, and that we are taking this lineage of pain and suffering, and we're slowly healing and healing more and more of that to come more into that heart-centered awareness collectively.
And I think ultimately it is because we all are one. You hear that all the time. And I've just, in my own spiritual journey, just started to understand that a little bit more. I'm talking to more and more people who've had spiritual experiences and understanding that we ultimately are all one. And we, as human bodies, maybe we're here to, you kind of just mentioned it, go through different hard times, but then to try to uplift and bring people like into the space that we want to keep growing as a human species, or to learn and grow as souls, who knows, but that's all perfect. There was something you said, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but it had to do with there's obviously a lot going on. This is going to be even for a little bit further, but there's a lot going on with the UFO conversations that came up in the Congress and all these things, and these big whistleblowers that came out and talked about how they've seen UFOs or UAPs and aliens and or whatever you want to call them. And one of the interesting things, one of the very first podcasts I did was on UFOs and UAPs and aliens and all these things, is that, and I was talking to my first guest about it, is that this big whistleblower that came through talking about aliens. He kept being asked about aliens, and he wouldn't refer to them as aliens. He wanted to refer to them as non-human biologics or entities. And the first thing that came to me, I remember watching this, and the first thing that really came to my mind was, I think that the whole UFO and alien thing has a lot to do with the spirit realm as well, and that they are likely already here. This is just my own personal opinion, so this is not the truth. Anyone listening, I don't know the truth, but my belief is that they are already here, and many of them probably help us. And I don't know about there being ones that don't, but at the same time, what I would say is, if they are here and they're not human, they could be far more advanced than us and living in a non-biologic body, meaning they are evolved to a point where they no longer need a body. And if that's the case, and maybe some of them are, but I do believe there's some of them that aren't. That's probably why you see a UFO and then you don't see a UFO. Where did it go? Not in the third dimension. It went somewhere else. And so I just think that that gets really intriguing. And that's an area that you and I we haven't really dug deep in that conversation. Like, we've talked about the idea that we could have had experiences from other planets, and that we almost remember that at times and different things, maybe past life, even though it's maybe parallel lives, who knows? But at the same time, we didn't really dig deep into the alien UFO thing. And I'm just wondering what your take is on all that right now.
Yeah, I love this. So I have this like weird alien fetish, and not like actually a fetish, but I love aliens. I
Right.
love aliens. I've got literally an alien tattooed on my hand.
Nice.
My stepdaughters, I drew an alien years ago, and we named him Frank, and we hide him around the house, and he's taken on a whole life of his own. And I talk about aliens all the time. And like my coworkers know it, like everybody in my life knows that I love aliens. And it's the concept of them. It feels like this fun, safe space for me. What I'll say is that I mentioned that I'm curious about there being different species of consciousness on this planet. And from what I've kind of like intuitively channeled and received in my own meditation practices, it's this idea and concept. And again, to each his own on this. I don't know truth either. This is just my experience of it. Mm-hmm. From what I've kind of gathered in my understanding of it is that we incarnate, we reincarnate, we go to different planets and have different experiences, and you learn and you have different intuitive gifts. You can work with energy in different ways. You can do these different energetic things on different planets. And then from that experience, incarnating onto Earth, we're all very different. How our energy works is very different. How our consciousness works is very different. For me, it's one of those spaces that I really enjoy is the passed away loved ones. I love connecting with people that have recently passed away. I love connecting with probable timelines and seeing probable timelines and seeing past lives and future lives. That's a space in meditation that I go to very frequently. And I feel like I've got this really curious understanding of it, because obviously we can't prove it, but it's something that there have been so many times in my life where I have received information about a possible timeline and followed certain guidance from that and ended up in a better place in my life because I listened to that guidance that I got from that. Like when COVID happened, I received very strong intuitive messages about the fact that I was not going to be returning to the job that I was working at a yoga studio at that time, and to really honor that and to not fight it. And I chose not to fight it and not to honor it. And then I started working with my meditation studio, with my meditation teacher, which became this beautiful chapter of healing for me. So with that, when we come back to the alien conversation, I think that all of us have different levels of awareness and different energies that we come in with, and that are aliens here, are they not? I think we're all aliens. I think they are us and we are them. And like you said, I speak with beings that are not in bodies frequently. In an energy healing recently with a client, there was a being that came in that wasn't a human form, but was a being that came in as a healing helper that was very obviously in like a humanoid form, but that wasn't like human. So, we could get real woo-woo with all of this stuff. And everyone's going to have their own thoughts and perspectives and opinions on it, and that's okay. I think that we get scared of what we don't know. We get scared of the unknown, and meditation opens up that space where you live in the unknown. And when you start to live in that trust of the unknown, your life starts to change in miraculous ways, and you open up yourself for your soul to step forward and guide you on your soul path. And unfortunately, it's so common to be afraid of what you don't know. And that's that ego clinging on to what it does know so it can try to protect you, to keep you alive, to keep you safe, that human aspect. And behind all of that, there's this conversation of aliens, and it's very controversial. And I think everyone's allowed to have the perspective they have on it, and that no one is more right or more wrong than another person. You have your experience based on what your soul needs at this time for your journey here on earth, whatever that may be for you specifically. For me, I feel very connected with aliens. I think they're absolutely here, but they're not here in the way that we think that they are. It's not like they're like in a, Harry Potter invisibility cloak walking around with us, messing with us, but their consciousness, their energy is something we can access and communicate with and receive guidance and support and healing from them.
Perfect. And I do believe that there are, there is knowledge out there that maybe we're not knowing about. And I hope that we continue to find truths out, because I do believe that humans are there. There's parts of us that probably aren't quite ready for it, but there's parts of us that are. And there's pieces that we're ready for. And I think those pieces that we're ready for, I think we should be able to know about. And that's why I'm so intrigued about this whole thing about them, having the Congress and these meetings and stuff. I'm really interested to see how that goes over time. I want to say, you mentioned something before I get to the final, like time flew, and I knew that this would go fast, and there's so many things that we could talk about, and there's a good chance that I may have you back and we talk again. Like, I would love it, like there's so many different directions we could go. But there was something you just said, and you had said that you followed your instinct and didn't return to a yoga studio during COVID, I believe. Is that what you said, right? And so much, this is such a piece in my life that I'm trying to become more aware of, and I think most people should become more aware of, is that we have that little voice inside of us that will come out and talk. And if we aren't aware that is our higher self, even though it's our little voice, it's our bigger voice, I guess I should say. If we're not aware of that voice or listening, then I think we can miss a lot of opportunities in our life to better our lives. So, meaning in meditation, for instance, again, part of going back to clearing our mind, whether it's in finding your own time, getting a meditative guide, learning meditation, taking up an instrument, going on walks, whatever it is, I think that's when you start to hear yourself more. And that's probably why it's been so good for you in your practice, is because you hear yourself. And there's so many times, and I've gone through it recently, where there was a few little voices that came to me and said, you should stop doing this, or you need to do this. And based on fear, I didn't go through with it. Or and fear comes in and it says, wait. And it gives you 10 different reasons why you shouldn't listen. And we have to be really careful, because that first intuitive feeling, that first thought, is trying to tell us to do something. And it could be to clear that space so that something bigger, better, and more beautiful can come in and change your life. And that is where I am right now. And I'm becoming aware of it, but I'm still human, and I still have my days where that fear comes in and goes, nope, can't do that. And it's just interesting that you said that you followed through and you went through it, and you're probably happier for it. I don't know if I'm speaking for you, but do you agree with that? Is that
Yeah, absolutely. That specifically was a moment that literally set my life on a totally different trajectory. Um, I mean, totally different. The job opportunity that came in that replaced the one that I was willing to let go of was this beautiful experience that offered me so much support and healing. And then it led me to where I am today with doing the nonprofit work, which is really where I wanted to land anyway. I've always wanted to eventually be in this sphere doing this work. Another reframe I'd like to invite into the conversation, which is something my stepdaughter actually taught me one time. There was a day when she was at our house and we had signed her up for these guitar lessons and she was so excited to go. And the day of, right before we went to leave, she was like, nope, I don't want to do it. My intuition is telling me that I shouldn't. I'm not gonna be safe. I'm not gonna know the people there. My intuition says no. And this beautiful kid, we've talked to her about meditation, intuition, all of that for years now. So she's got the language and is telling me and communicating this with me. And in that moment, it struck to me the difference between your instinct and your intuition. And how do we teach those two separate things, especially to our children today? So your instinct is that human aspect of you, that ego, that fear, that survival brain, the animal brain that is saying, if you do this, you're not safe because you will die. I don't know what that is. I've never been there before. It's brand new.
Mhm.
It is unknown. This is danger, and I don't know how to protect you from it because we haven't been there before. Hold back, don't go. Red stop sign. Your intuition is the aspect of you that is that higher soul awareness that is asking to expand. It's asking to pursue your dharma. And for those of you who don't know dharma, it's your soul's purpose here on earth. And that intuition is that it's that subtle voice that kicks in and it says, go do that thing. It might be scary. It might feel threatening at first because you don't know what you're getting into. It might be chaotic. Go do it anyway. This is your path. This is what
Mhm.
you came to earth to do. And a little plug here, this intuitive healing work that I've had the opportunity to do with you that I did, it literally changed my life. It's the thing that got me from being sex trafficked to being a stable human being that could participate and function in the world again, that I now teach. It's intuitive healing. You're healing the relationship with your intuition so that you can hear it louder, you can trust it more, and you can honor it when it shows up. That's literally the intention of this program that I teach. For those that are curious and interested and want to know how to, there's tools, there's resources, there's this foundation in this intuitive healing program that helps you access that in a deeper way.
Wow. That was really interesting. It looks like instinct versus intuition. And instinct, because I was going to go down that road for a moment. Instinct, I think intuition is, you're right, it's a small, light, calm knocking. It's a calm voice. That's your intuition, right? And then your instinct is more ego based. And I think instinct comes with a package of loud fears that start to do, and it starts to kind of like build up. And there's this, and this is why you shouldn't do this, and this is why you shouldn't. And it's more noisy. Whereas intuition is a light knocking, a light voice, and it doesn't keep coming back. You have to really catch it. You have to catch it and be like, okay, why did that happen? And then that's when I think sometimes instinct might take over and start causing chaos. So we got it. You're right. We have to be careful, because I was going to ask you that. I was going to say, how do we know? You could have somebody who really is not happy with a job and they're like, I need to get out of this job. And there's that little voice saying, quit the job. And you get that, just leave the job. But then it's like, but I can't, because I gotta pay for this. And what if that leads to this? And then what if I have no money? And then what if I'm on the streets? And then and I think that's your instinct. That's your survival mode. That is your, like, I need to survive, like you said, or I'm going to die. And so I think it is really important. And I bet you we could do an entire show just based around that, because it happens so frequently to people. And I think that is something that a lot of listeners could take from this and really start to work on. What is that called again? That work?
Um, Yeah, the intuitive healing program is what I teach. It's called intuitive healing, and it's very much focused on the third eye. You're working with energy, learning to read it visually. What's really cool is you can read other people's energy, and then your intuition gets validated over and over and over again. And through that process, you really start to honor your intuition because you start to recognize that this isn't just feeding me a whole bunch of lies, maybe that other voice is. And the other
Mhm.
thing I'll say is the more you meditate and you get into the calmness, the more you can start to understand what are my triggers? When is my nervous system getting dysregulated? When am I going into anxiety about something or depression about something, focused on the future or the past about what it's going to be? When is my past or future holding me back? And you can gain more clarity around that. And that's where meditation can be a really powerful thing. And for me, if I haven't meditated in a while, I know because life feels chaotic. My brain takes over and it just will be noise. Another little seed I'll plant here is that the intention of meditation is not to turn your mind off. Your mind will always be telling you stories, thoughts will flow. It's a matter of learning how to be the observer of the thoughts and not identified with them. When you start to believe your thoughts are you, that's when we get into trouble here. When you start to kind of pull away and recognize that these thoughts are separate from who I am, and you watch your thoughts as if they're a story passing you by, then that's where your awareness has that space to come in and help guide you in your life and give you that strength, that courage to really lead your life in a different way. So in meditation, I hear a lot of people talk about, they've tried to meditate, but they can't. Their mind just keeps going anyway. It's not going to turn off. That's not what we're doing in meditation. And I think that's something that holds people back from ever meditating. But when you have different modalities and you try different forms of meditation, there's so many out there, then eventually you can get to that place where you recognize that your thoughts are not you, and you can have that awareness to witness the thoughts instead of being the thoughts.
Wow. So it eventually can help you actually determine the difference between that intuition or instinct, that this
Yes.
is an intuitive feeling and this is just my instincts coming through and taking over. So that's really fascinating. If you could sum it up in your own, whatever way you want to sum it up, why are we here?
I love that question. And really, I would sum it up as we're here to be humans. We are awareness, and awareness could be so many things and so many dimensions, so many experiences, so many realities. And we're here at this time to be a human and to have the human experience. And my hope for every person listening to this is that somewhere in that we can find the excitement and joy and spark and magic of being a human again, because being a human is so much more than this pain and suffering that we've seen in so many lifetimes. And I believe we're here so that we can have the human experience and find the joy and the magic and the play, the excitement of being a human again.
I love that. And what would be any final words of wisdom for anyone?
I would say throughout this conversation, we've talked a lot about like different levels of energy and being this versus being that. And I brought into the equation that the thinking brain can want to compare that I'm better than you, or my journey isn't like that person, so I'm not ever going to be good enough, or I'll never have that awareness. Those things can come in, right? And they're very common. They're normal. It's a normal part of being human. So my invitation for everybody is to spend some time after listening to this episode, and whether it's journaling, whether it's just sitting in silence, whether it's writing yourself a letter or listening to a song you like, take a moment to remind yourself of why you are extraordinary exactly as you are in this moment. When I meet people, something that's important to me is to have the perspective that who you are here in this moment now is extraordinary. It doesn't matter the mistakes you've made. It doesn't matter the things you've been through, the choices that you've chosen or maybe made because that's the best you could do at that moment. You are enough. You are deserving. You are extraordinary, and you don't need to change. You can be who you are, and that can be perfect exactly as it is. And you can have all of the things and the joy and all of that. And I think we get into trouble when we start telling ourselves the reasons we're not good enough. So I just offer that invitation to spend some time reminding yourself why you are enough here in this moment, exactly as you are.
Said perfectly. Thank you. so much for being here. If people want to find you, how would they contact you? What is the best form of contacting?
I am on social media. I have a website, alexismika.com. Alexis is ALEXIUSMIKA.com. My Instagram is alexis.mika. I'm rarely on there these days, but I post things and I've got stuff coming up and I've got stuff online. And I'm hoping to, now that I've been through a recent period of massive change and I'm grounding into routine again. So now that I'm grounding into routine, I'm hoping to have more to share, more to teach. Another fun place to explore if you're new to meditation, want that guidance, is a free app called Insight Timer. You can find me, Alexis Mika, on there. There's a lot of free meditations. I've got like 3 meditations on there right now. I've got more in the works right now that are being edited and I'll have posted soon. And I'll continue to post guided meditations there. You can also find out about my free group meditation on Sundays through my website and on Instagram at alexis.mika.
That is awesome. It's alexis.mika.
Yeah, on
That's
Instagram. There was already an Alexis Mika, so I had to put a period in between. Type in my name and you'll
awesome.
find me.
Thank you so much for being here. This has been something I've been very excited to have you on. So until next time, thank you to everybody that's been listening in. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please make sure you share and subscribe these podcasts, because I am here to inspire and the guests are here to inspire. And that's why we are soul inspired. So thanks for the coming on, and just have a good rest of your day, everybody. I'll see you next time.
So